Welcome to the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast. Today's episode, The Day of Disgust.
Welcome to the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast with Scott Whitwam, your blueprint to financial abundance. Settle in as we explore the mindset and methods for wealth building through real estate.
Welcome back. I'm Scott Whitwam, and today Brian and Gina Kingdeski are here with me. I'm grateful to have them back for the podcast. They're seasoned and successful real estate investors, and I get to call them friends. Welcome, and today I'm really excited because we talked about this actually last year about doing a podcast about the Day of Disgust.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for having us back. We're excited to be here. Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year.
Yes, thank you.
Well, it's really good. So why don't you explain to us, first off, of what you would describe as the Day of Disgust?
Yeah, I mean, this is a definitely a long topic. We could talk hours on this subject. I've had them personally many times in my life, which is unfortunate. You figured, I learned my lesson, but it's for the easiest example to describe is that alcoholic that is that you may know in your family or that you've heard about. You've read that, they'll continue to drink themselves almost to death. Like they'll lose everything. And everyone in their life is telling them, hey, what are you doing? Like, hey, you're losing your kids, you're losing your wife, you're losing your job. Like they're telling you everything.
Right.
But until they personally want to stop or try to get help, they'll never get help. So that's probably the easiest example in the Day of Disgust. And the Day of Disgust works in every area, your health and your fitness. And, you look in the mirror and you're like, I did not think I was going to look this way. And, there's a moment where you're like, I'm done.
So you got to come to a point where you're just absolutely so done with the situation that you're willing to take responsibility to make some kind of...
And it happens in your relationships, with your marriage. It's like, before you get married, you have in your mind, like, how you thought your marriage was going to be. And then you just go through life, you get busy and you just don't set up those good habits. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, you're like, we don't even talk to each other. We don't even sleep in the same room.
Yeah, you come in with unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
We don't have that problem though. So.
No, because we work on it, and we.
Well, I think that's a key in anything in life. My wife and I, in April, will be married 40 years.
Wow.
Oh,
and it doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
I have to give her more credit than me. Because as an A personality, it's very easy for me just to get focused on certain things. And she's got to from time to time go, hey, remember, I'm here. And then it's like, oh, yeah. We're working on this relationship so that we don't get to, what you're talking about, a day where you're just like, I'm done.
You're done.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, going back to the alcoholic aspect, that Day of Disgust could be the day they get their second DUI, the day they accidentally, get in a car accident and hurt somebody. I mean, it really just depends. And so like Brian's saying, whether it's your physical, the way you look in the mirror and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know who this person is. I've gained, 20 pounds or I look a certain way. Like you're going to get to that point where you're just like, that's it. I can take it no more. And only I can make that decision along with God's help to make that change in that life.
But you got to take personal responsibility. Nobody can force you into it. And I've seen that with families going through drug addiction with kids. As much as the parents would like to be able to bring their kids to that point of just going, hey, I'm disgusted with this. I'm not going to do it anymore. You can't. The kid has to come to the point. I mean, all of us have been affected. I don't care who you are by some member of your family with alcohol, drugs, whether it's sexual addiction, food addiction, whatever the addiction is. We've all, been affected by somebody like that.
Yeah.
And I had with drug addiction in my family with a sibling, and and there's nothing you can do about it. Is the problem because it's out of your control? Because of what you just said, Gina, they got to come to that point of personal responsibility.
Yeah, and you feel helpless as a parent or as a sibling or a friend to see someone struggling like that.
Right.
But like you said, they have to get to that point that you, if it's you or them, have to make that decision that no more.
Right.
Yeah. And it could happen, in every area of your life. And it could happen in your finances. Like you're just tired of, at the end of the month, there's more bills than there is money. And so, it could happen in any area in the day discuss. And, I think part of it is God will nudge us.
Right.
And he will put people in our lives and events in our life that are like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, there are opportunities.
My dad, he drank and all that when I was little. And one day he got a DUI and never had another sip again for the rest of his life. So it takes willpower. He never went to AA, never took classes, counseling. He just was done. And I don't know why. I never really asked him what made him come to that point where I'm done. But
that's interesting, where it was just cold turkey. My mom, she was, she just become a Christian, and she smoked. I mean, they grew up in that generation where if you didn't smoke, you were weird, that kind of thing. And so she smoked all her life, and when she was in her 40s, one day, it was just like God, hit her, and she actually took and put out her cigarette and grabbed, this is back before, all of our electronic stuff. Yeah. So we communicated in the family by a cork board. She actually took the butt of that cigarette and a stick pin and stuck it on the cork board where we would pass notes to each other, things to do. And she said, the Lord just told me it's the last cigarette I'll ever smoke. And she never smoked another one.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of what you're talking about, and Gina even mentioned it, is there can be some divine intervention. Mm-hmm. And like you said, that sometimes God uses the process. He may not have got you there, but he'll use the process sometimes to show you there's a better way.
Yeah. No, I definitely believe that it takes something like that to have people change and to want to change. I mean, the world draw that we live in right now, it's coming from everywhere.
Right.
And, the whole draw of, the way you think things are supposed to be based on what the media and everybody tells you. And then there's this whole realm of God and spiritual that he wants us to live in.
Right.
And so we all fall trapped to it. I'm talking about the day of discuss, and we're going to be talking about goals. I work on it every day.
Right.
And Gina and I, we like put steps in our lives. We talked about our routine so we can just do that. And we're not doing this stuff to work our way to God. We're doing it because we love God and we want to obey him.
Right.
There's a big difference. And so when you're doing that, I mean, we want to be spiritually clean and we want to be healthy in all areas of our life. The Bible is the best book ever, and it's all of his word and his laws and his rules. It's not to hold us back, to hurt us. It's to bring us joy, abundance. When we live the way God wants us to live, we have a better life. And it doesn't mean we're going to be rich, wealthy, and skinny and all this stuff. It means that our future in heaven, in eternity, is forever.
Right.
And this earth that we're on, it's just a blip. And it's so easy to get caught up in the world and what it has to offer when we are living here for a short time.
Right.
And we're going to be in heaven with God forever.
Well, it's really interesting. You mentioned that it's, multiple areas of your life. In fact, I talk about it often. It's called prosperity. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when you talk about prosperity, people think it's just about money. And so when they look at their discuss, they're like, well, I'm doing okay financially, therefore life must be good. Or when they set their goals, they only talk about money goals. But prosperity is a lot more than that.
Yeah.
You can prosper in your mind, right? You can have clean, clear mental health.
Joy.
Oh, isn't
peace.
That the goal for everyone?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Joy and peace.
Yep, the fruits of the spirit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's taped up on my mirror. That's what I look at every day.
Yeah.
And that goes right in with what you're saying.
Right, and that's what prosperity is. In the Greek, there's a word. It's called zoe, and it talks about the completeness that God created man to live in. So spiritually. So we would have a relationship with God. Physically, that we would be able to live a long, healthy life. And when you follow good dietary rules, you live healthier, longer, and then financially, and it's not about, from my perspective, it's not about accumulating all I can, but it's accumulating enough to meet all of my needs so that I have enough left over to meet the needs of others around me. And that's what prosperity is. And what happens is we get one of these things out of balance. You get it out of balance in the health area, you get it out of balance in the relationship area, you get it out of balance somewhere along the way. And then what happens is it starts to bring you every day closer to that day of disgust, because at some point it's going to get so out of balance that you're going to hit rock bottom in some area.
For sure. And you think about it, and it's going to affect different people different ways. If whether it's irritability or it's illness inside your body, if you're completely out of balance based on those, your spirituality, your financial, your relationships, your physical, all of that, like something's going to go askew, and you're going to get to the point that you're like, I can't handle this. My body can't handle this. And whether it's being sick, or I don't want to say a cancer or anything, but dealing with depression or something like that, that can be just because you're out of balance.
But they all come from that.
Yeah.
Cancer, they have proven that there's some imbalance. In fact, Dr. Patrick Quillen, he was vice president at Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and my wife and I had a chance to have dinner with him and Noreen, his wife, one time, and we were talking about the causes of cancer and the research that they're doing. And people generally, my understanding is, get cancer 6 or 7 times in their lifetime, but their body's immune system is in a place to overcome the erratic growth of cells. Yeah. And that when your body now becomes out of balance in some area, and it can happen because of, I can tell you, I've seen it because people that have hatred, they have some kind of either physical imbalance, they have some kind of mental imbalance, and it actually leads to breakdown of the immune system, which causes that. So that's all part of that. And so, this whole day of disgust thing, if you can catch things before they start. I mean, I just heard a press conference of an AI company that said that they found that in the human body that there's markers that are these predecessors of cancer development. And if they can find them early through diagnostics with AI that can digest a whole lot more information than a human doctor can sit and look at the papers. A lot of times they can find the things that we're talking about beforehand. Yeah. Now, it's hard to do that with alcoholism. It's hard to do that with drug abuse. It may start with, hey, I'm taking this drug because I had an accident, sporting or skiing or whatever it was. Yeah. And now all of a sudden it becomes addictive, but catching it early, which Brian's advice about the Bible, you can catch these things early, because when you're living in a relationship that is two-way with God, you can see things that are out of balance in your life.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is, but out of the 5 major areas in our life, health and fitness is the one that people talk about most. And it's what I like to talk about as well, just because it's the easiest one to get control of.
Right.
And it's the easiest one to see results quickly. So if you start working out and eating healthy, in 2 weeks, you'll see a difference. Right. But, sometimes when you're in a relationship and it's been broken and, maybe you start seeing some nice stuff, you'll see some results. But the health and fitness is easy to get in control. And it's also, once it's in control, then all of a sudden the other areas start opening up.
Right.
Well,
it's just like something that's really strange that happens.
You said you start building one area, you build that confidence, and you're seeing that reward, and that makes you open it up, and then all the other areas start to fall into place.
But I remember it was like 2011, and I was on vacation, and I remember, and I've been basically self-employed for 25 years. So the best thing about being self-employed is you have complete control of your time. Right?
Yep.
You may be eating ramen, you may be eating filet, but at least you can control your time, right? So I remember I was sitting on the beach, and it was 2011, and I remember just this guy walked by, and he was just in great shape. And for some reason it hit me my day of disgust with my body. And I had played baseball, basketball, Division I baseball. Like I killed my body. Like I worked out so hard. And then you get married, you have kids, and you're busy trying to build a business and just didn't have time.
Right.
And so that hit me that day where I'm like, I work for myself. Like there's no reason that I cannot find time to go to the gym.
Right.
And so that day I, made some changes and then I, became I got in better shape and healthier and all that stuff that goes with it. So that was one of the days of disgust that I had. But I want everyone to hear this. I want everyone to hear that we all have time, right? So time will go by 5 years, 10 years, and you will look back at some point of your life. Right. If you're not living in one of the 5 areas, if you're not doing it somewhat the right way, I'm not sure if there's a perfect right way, but you're gonna look back and like, I just wasted all my time. I spend 3 or 4 hours a night watching TV. I'm not building relationships. And just think about what you can do. Reading a book instead of turning on the TV, and you're educating yourself, which maybe you buy a book in the area that you're struggling with. If it's finances, you go to Amazon and there's thousands of them.
Books on finances, yeah.
And go to YouTube. Just type in what your problem is. Like, how do I save more money? And you'll see hundreds and hundreds of them. But, people, there's time. We waste time. We are time wasters.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
what we do. But that's what we're trained to do. Like that means like, oh, I've worked hard, so now I get to sit on the couch for 6 hours because I deserve it.
I deserve it, right?
What is that? I do that sometimes. You get wore out. You like turn on a game and but then you're like, you've turned on the game, you watch it for 3 or 4 hours, and then you're like, oh, it doesn't make you feel better.
And I'm asleep on the couch by then.
And you're asleep on the couch.
Well, you feel like you've wasted your night. Like I could have like whatever it is. It doesn't have to be so intense, but it could just be, I could have called my mom. I could have reached out to one of my kids. I could have read a book. Could have gone to the park with the dogs and walked with my wife. Like, think about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things that you could have. It's just
bad habits.
Yeah.
That's all it is. But those bad habits, and people are like, I'm 20, I'm 25, I've got all the time in the world, right? But we're going to reach a point in our life, if we're not living intentionally, we're going to look back and we're going to be filled with regrets.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the biggest fears that I have. I don't want to be filled with regrets in any area of my life. Like opportunities with Gina or my kids or whatever, like that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to look back and like, man, I wish I would have done something different. So live now, be present, get off your social media,
make the decision now.
Turn off the TV, put your phone down, be present, just sit, play games. Like, I don't know what that looks like for everybody. For everyone, it's going to be different, but I just want people to hear that we all have the same 24 hours in a day. How are you going to spend it?
Yeah. And I would say one of the things that I think that people feel ashamed about, and that's getting help. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you come to your day of disgust, not everybody is as motivated as I am, and probably not as motivated as you two are, right? Yeah. There's nothing wrong with getting help. Yeah. Whether it's spiritual help from a pastor, whether it's counseling help from, a psychologist to help you get through some stuff, whether it's help in a program, a recovery program to say, hey, look, I realize that I've come here and I can't do this by myself. Yeah. I've been fortunate. I've come to a couple days of disgust. One of them was when I was 18 years old, and I grew up stealing alcohol from mom and dad. They used to buy these little bottles, and we would go and party and have kegers in high school, and all the kind of rebellious stuff that you kind of do. And my wife and I were living here in Phoenix. I was going to school down here. We were still living in the Pacific Northwest, but we'd moved down here so I could go to school. And I was in school and went to a company party, and we got so drunk. I mean, projectile vomiting drunk. Yeah. That the next morning when I woke up, I said to myself, that'll never happen to me again.
Yeah.
My dad was an alcoholic. My grandpa was an alcoholic. My uncle was an alcoholic. And my brother was headed that direction. I said, this will never happen to me again. Yeah. And I had to make that decision. I mean, that wasn't kind of the upbringing that I had. I used to bartend when I was in junior high for my family's parties, and so it was, so this, it wasn't just like, that's
the
way.
Exposure. I mean, you were around it.
I was around it.
So it's hard
because
not
socially
to
drinking back then was
correct.
That's what people did.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, that's a good point because, we all have people in our life that, will need that extra help.
Right.
So I think we should maybe spend a few minutes and talk about that. I think it's
absolutely. I think that'd be good.
Very important because, I tend to be the high A, and so is Gina, and we're just like, something's wrong. Let's fix it, right? And then so somebody may hear this and they may God may work in their spirit and say, hey, like in this part of your life, you need help. Okay, so how do they get help?
I mean, I can talk about that too.
Let's go.
I mean, going back to the day of disgust, I just wanted to kind of share mine a little bit. After I went through a divorce, I kind of was floating around, not sure what path I was going down, and involved with a lot of toxic people and making some not good decisions in my life, and not being the best mom that I could be either. I was more concerned with, what I was doing next, what's going on. And I remember one day, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I remember one day driving home from work and being so concerned about what was going on my phone, whether it was conversation or whatever. I made a left-hand turn and drove up onto the curb, almost over the curb to oncoming traffic. And I went home and I was like, I'm done. I have to make a change. This is not healthy. I could have hurt somebody. I could have hurt myself. And I believe the next day I started going to counseling. I got a counselor. Maybe it wasn't the next day. I probably had to wait. But called up a counselor. It was right before COVID was happening and stuff like that, but went in there and really worked through a lot of things. But I also made those decisions from that day and everything that led up to that day that I had to remove these things from my life so I can work on healing myself.
Right.
But yes, finding professional help, finding godly people who support you, and bringing that sin into the light, because you can't heal until it's brought into the light.
Right.
I mean, God knows everything, but you really sometimes need to express it to another godly person and go through it that way. So getting that help, surrounding yourself with godly people that you can trust. We believe in sharing that with someone of the same sex. Like, you should not be going and disclosing what's going on, very personal with opposite sex, somebody that you work with or anything. But that was definitely my day of disgust. And I'm very, very grateful for the counselor that I had that continued to work with me until I got to the point that I really started healing. And then lo and behold, as my soul began to heal, I was wanting more.
Right.
And that's when I walked into God's light and became a Christian and realized, oh my goodness, if I would have had this,
right,
I just needed Jesus, maybe it wouldn't have happened.
Happened.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is we have to realize we can't do it on our own.
No.
And that's why God put people around us. I mean, he didn't just make one and just say, hey, you go and be in the earth.
This is a real estate podcast, right?
Right.
I mean, we're talking about goals, right? But when you think about real estate and something that you tell an investor, build your team.
Right.
Title, hard money, a crew.
Right.
You're building your team. You're doing your same thing in your personal life. You're going to church. You're in a small group. You're in a men's group.
Yep.
Going to counseling possibly. Like, why do we ignore our personal life when we're trying to build money and build our business, but we take away those, like, whenever I have fallen into sin or whatever bad things that have ever happened in my life, it's because I've isolated myself and I stopped doing stuff that was important.
Right.
That this told us to do.
Yeah. And that happens in every area.
Yeah.
You start isolating yourself, you're making the better decisions, and all of a sudden you get on the scale and you're like, how'd I gain 20 pounds?
Yeah.
or, how come I've got this lawsuit, or how come I've got these things happening? And a lot of times because we've isolated ourselves, we've avoided wise counsel.
Yeah.
We've avoided, interacting with people who can build us up. Mm-hmm. And that's part of, when we talk about this being a real estate podcast, part of the reason why I have you guys here is because you can help build, others up.
Yeah.
You build me up when we're together and we talk, I'm always looking for people who are going to get me, and so when I have shortcomings in my life, that's what I'm looking for. And I've been through counseling myself. My wife and I have been through many different marriage counselors, because we knew it was important for us to learn how to communicate. Mm-hmm. People think that marriage, I guess, is somehow you get this certificate and it's going to overcome the fact that you came from two different cultures, mm-hmm. were raised in two different ways, have two different ways of thinking, and all of a sudden the certificate is going to fix all that.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't.
And all the hurts and hang-ups from our childhood.
Right.
And expectations that get tied in there. And
Yeah, and so, there's nothing wrong with getting help in any area.
Yeah.
I tell it, obviously people who want to be investors, you need to get a coach, somebody that can help you so you don't make the same mistakes we all made.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that it's that pride that we all have. And, I think people have the most growth when they're vulnerable in any area. So in real estate, since we're in a real estate podcast, it's easy to get help.
Right.
But you have to ask for it. You have to go, we're talking about having an event in April. Somebody wants to come, you have to sign up.
Right.
And you have to attend but that's how you get help, and that's how you grow. And that's what the Bible tells us. Isolation is the worst. Be around. And, and that could be in it doesn't have to be in business, but I don't know how to work out. I have never worked out before. Go to the gym.
Right.
Or go get a trainer. I don't have money. EOS is $10 a month.
Oh yeah, and you get a free training. But we were just talking about this. The nice thing about the gym, I had some of our small group. We were just kind of discussing this type of situation. They're like, "Oh, I want to go to the gym, but I don't know how to do things." I'm like, "I'll go with you, first of all, if you want, and second of all, the gym is amazing because there's instructions on every single machine.
And the machines are lined up.
They're lined up.
And you can go through it. And when I started going back to the gym after some hiatus, I go at 3:30 in the morning because you get a little nervous and everything. You're like, I don't want people watching me. What if I'm doing it wrong? And as I built my confidence, I know that sounds so silly going at 3:30 in the morning just because I didn't know how to do everything. But then you get used to it and you build that confidence and there's trainers at the gym to help you if you have any questions. And people are so friendly. If you were to ask somebody, hey, do you know how to use this? I don't think any meathead or whoever it is, gym rat, is going to say, no, I'm not going to show you how.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because, Brian, I want to just piggyback on what you said. The information's out there. But the other thing is people have to act on it.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times, and I know you guys are trainers also, you guys have worked with a lot of people. How many times people come, they hear the information, you share the how to do it, and then a year from now you run into them again and they're in the same place they were before because they haven't taken any action. Yeah. At some point, too, if we're going to get out of our day of disgust, we have to take action. And I think part of that is the next thing that we kind of wanted to talk about. Not that I want to leave the day of disgust, because again, we could probably talk about this for the next couple hours.
But we can leave it because we don't want to have any more days of disgust. We'll leave it
but
behind.
Let's talk about how we get out of it, and because there is a process for getting out of this thing, and I think
we've talked about some of the things already. So,
but let's kind of formalize the process here.
How you get out of it, but it's fear is a big motivator. And so is success. So when someone's listening to this, they're gonna have their own thing, right? It could be fear, I talked about the being 80 and looking back. We're all gonna die. Do we want to die unhealthy, or do we want to live our years out? So that goes with the fitness. Do we want to die where we're living off the government, or do we want to be financial? Do you want to die alone?
Right.
That's a big one. Think about it.
Yeah.
Think about you're on your deathbed, you're looking around, and there's a nurse. Or Gina and I buy homes, and we get them full with everybody's stuff. the kids are out of state, couldn't find them.
Right.
And we buy homes all the time, and we're going through a dead person's sock drawer, or it's very sad when you think about it. So everyone's going to have their own motivation. But so that may prompt somebody listening to this. They may prompt them to say, like, okay, like, that may motivate them to hear, like, this is my day of disgust in whatever area it is. Be preemptive and start working on stuff now, because, like, you know, we have a guy in our life, and he got into this severe sex porn addiction, right? And all of a sudden, like, it all came out and everything got destroyed, right? The good thing about this gentleman is he went to work. He started going to the church. He started going to a Celebrate Recovery. Men's group, small group. Like, he was going to something every other night. And, you know, it's been a year now, I think.
A little over a year now.
The family's mending, and things are back to getting back to normal. But, like, that's the amazing thing. Like, people think that it's a big, huge formula, but the formula is go to work.
Right. So somebody has
go to work.
Somebody has to have a goal. I mean, you got to have a goal. That day, we come to the day of disgust, and now you got to have a goal. You know, that's it for this week's podcast on the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast. Thanks for taking time to join us today. I invite you to subscribe today and be part of our growing community. Be sure to leave us a review, and if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can always find the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. This is Scott Whitwam, and I've been with Brian and Gina Kingdeski. Be sure to join me on our next episode of the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast, where we're wealth building through real estate.